This is Olga Adler from Austin Businesswoman, and I'm very excited about our today's webinar. We're going to talk about leadership and talent sustainability. What do you do when you want to grow your business? What do you do when you want to hire people and you want to make their working environment as comfortable and dynamic as successful companies do? We have an amazing panel of experts who either grew their own teams or help a lot of brands and companies every day to grow sustainably and achieve success in a good working environment. Our first panelist is Amber Gray, founder and CEO of Trusty Oak Virtual Assistant Service Company. And Amber last year won Austin Businesswoman of the Year award. Hi, Amber.
Hey everyone, thank you so much, Olga.
Our, our second guest is Vidya Moorthy, an expert in global and multicultural communications, professional development, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hi, Vidya.
Hi, Olga. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Our next guest is Dabney Hailey. Sorry, am I saying it correctly?
That's perfect.
Founder of Hailey Group, a pioneer in the application of arts learning to leadership and team development.
Thanks, Olga. Delighted to be here.
Thank you, Dabney. The next guest is Danielle Langton, business strategy consultant, helping 6 and 7-figure CEOs streamline and scale up product development and strategic selling.
Hey there, Olga. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining. The next is Paula Shepard, certified life and business coach, leadership mentor, and host of the Confidence Sessions podcast. One of my favorites.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. And the last but not the least is Haven Tibbetts, co-founder and CEO of the 3 locations of Deep Root ATX Salon and the Property Sisters Staycation Business, and the 2 times nominee of the Employer of the Year Awards. Hi, Haven.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. And I have a lot of questions for all of you. I want to pick your brains. I want to know how to grow a business, how to hire the right people, how to make them happy, and make it so they stay and don't run away from me. And so, first question is for everyone. There is this debate between different opinions. Should you be a leader first before you hire teams? Or should you hire a team and then you grow as a leader? Who thinks that you should be a leader first? Raise your hands. Okay. Okay, that's everyone.
We all agree.
Okay, and all right. And now is a tricky question then. So, what makes or breaks a good leader? And I want to direct this question to a person who coaches people to be leaders every single day. Paula Shepard, please.
Yeah, so I think, what does it mean to be a leader? That was your question, correct?
Yeah, what are the what's the most leader making trait? Oh,
I mean, the most leader making trait is one, owning who you are. You have to own who you are. You have to know what you value. If you don't do that, then there's no way that you can create a culture and bring people along for the ride to build out your ultimate vision.
Mm-hmm. Any mistakes you think leaders make when you want to lead a team and you're like, okay, now I'm in charge? What would be the most common mistake in your opinion?
Not giving ownership to their team, really trying to control every single aspect. And that's really the hardest thing to do, right? Let go when you're building this amazing thing. It's your baby, it's your child, and you're trying to love and nurture it. So allowing someone else to come in and take over a process or fill gaps and see blind spots is really kind of terrifying, but it's necessary.
I totally agree. That's a very good point, actually, because a lot of people attribute successes of their companies to themselves without actually giving credit to their employees. So, yeah, I completely agree. And my next question, since a lot of people, all of us, voted that you need to be a leader first, but how do you test it before you actually lead someone, before you actually have a team. So my next question is how to prepare for growth and growing your team before you actually hire anyone. And I would love to direct this question to Amber because
Right.
she
Awesome.
started from a solopreneurship to a big company that works
Well,
all over
I
the
would
US.
still say we're small, but we're definitely growing and much bigger than when I first started out. So yeah, I think for me, it kind of piggybacks on what Paula was saying in terms of knowing who you are and what you stand for, because one of the biggest things that we focus on and what we've seen actually really make an impact that trickles all the way down is really knowing what your values are first and foremost. So, if you can place everything around core values that you're really clear on for yourself first, but that also for your company, that's going to help you feel comfortable letting go and, delegating things and, giving authority and autonomy to the people you hire. So for us, it's, determining those core values, but not just like, writing out some core values you can stick on the wall or, put on your website. It really needs to be something that you're using as a lens to hire people. You're using it to make decisions to, maybe move someone into a different seat or potentially letting them find success in another company. There's a lot of different ways that you can use those core values. And for us, it makes it really easy to know what the right thing to do is if I'm looking at it through those values. So for me, that's number one kind of foundational thing to do to prepare for growth, even before you're ready to hire.
That's a good point. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Because I think it's a very important question.
Sure, I'll take a stab at it.
Okay, go ahead, Vidya.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. And first of all, I feel very proud to share this platform with all of you, such accomplished women, such incredible professionals. So thank you once again for having me here. I think since you asked about what we do to prepare ourselves to be leaders, Olga, broadly, I would classify it exactly like Amber said, into three broad categories. The first would be a certain set of emotional skills, just being able to cope with the pressure, just being able to have the courage, the faith, the value system, like she described. The second set of skills that I would say is try to develop people skills, the ability to influence and the ability to control the environment that you're trying to lead. That would be my second suggestion. And third one that goes without saying is domain competency. Whether it's a service or a product, do you know this stuff inside out? Do you understand the market, not just from a local perspective, but from a national and sometimes even international perspective? So that would be my three tips, emotional skills, people skills, and domain competency.
Wow, you have a lot of you have a lot of input in that question. How often do you train people in that particular step of their business development?
I try to restrict my training sessions to 4 sessions a week, to be honest with you, because it's so, you really give a lot, and everybody here knows exactly what I'm saying. And especially since I work on multiple time zones. So I try to restrict that to about 4 sessions a week, Olga.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I want to ask someone who actually leads big teams, and I mean very big teams. What's the biggest challenge of onboarding and training new employees and making sure that they become an integral part of your team? And this question is for Haven.
Thank you, Olga. So as everyone knows that's gone through the onboarding process with new hires, it can be a little frustrating because you can send them all of the prep work in advance and you can give them a checklist and they still show up unprepared, right? Nobody really reads your emails or anything like that. It's very rare that someone shows up completely prepared for an onboarding process. So I would say that's a challenge. We do our very best to make it as simple and streamlined as possible. So again, sending the email, sending the checklist, all of that is there for them to go back and to reference. But at the end of the day, it really is a one-on-one personal experience. So we do take the time out, either myself or one of my managers, and really do a one-on-one, really thorough onboarding. So we know if they skip through or scan through the emails or the checklist, whatever it is, that we are going back and we are reiterating the things that are really important and valuable to our organization. So for us, culture is number one. Off the bat, we want people to know when you're coming to work for us, you can be the biggest and the best, but if you hurt our culture, you will not be here for very long. So it's setting the tone right away. You know, you want to make sure that they are completely on board with your culture. You know, we need to set expectations right up front. So, you know, immediately we go into going over the employee handbook, making sure all of the things that we expect of them as employees is very clear. There's no gray area there. I spent personally a lot of time on our handbook. I've spent a lot of time on all of our onboarding documents and processes. So I wanted everything to be very clear cut and defined. I didn't want there to be a lot of questions or not know who they need to go to. So I outline, we actually have a presentation that I send them, and it outlines everything for them, who they need to, you know, which manager they would go to for this problem, what manager they would go to for this problem. You know, if they want benefits, whatever it is, it's all there. It's all there for them to access. They can go back and access it later. So setting up in advance, like being very prepared and being very organized in advance is really important, because it kind of sets the tone for them too. If they go into an onboarding process and you guys are like scrambling, oh, let me get those forms, let me figure out, you know, it makes it feel like we don't know what we're doing, right? Even though we do, we're just a little busy and maybe we weren't 100% prepared for them coming in. But it's always really important for you to be 100% prepared when you have somebody coming in to onboard, and setting those expectations, making sure you're really defining the roles for them and for, you know, you and the whole thing. And then you get to the technical stuff, you know, all the forms and everything like that. So you need to make sure you're staying up to date with all of the new, anytime there's a new update in a form or a law or whatever, you want to make sure you're always staying on top of that. So, you know, that's that part of it. And then following up. So we also have a company-wide policy. We have a team calendar. My managers have to input in the team calendar when they're doing the follow-up, so that we all are aware of when it's happening, so we can discuss it afterwards. We have a 90-day introductory period for all of our employees. We make sure that they know that in advance. And it's to make sure it's a good fit for everyone. Just kind of want them to know what's going on up front. And so we have a follow-up meeting a little bit before that 90 days is up, just to make sure, check in. How's it going? What are your questions? Is there anything we can help you with? Is there anything any suggestions you have for us? You know, Melanie and I are really, really big on open door. It's an open door policy. We want everyone to feel comfortable coming to us. But as new employees, sometimes people aren't as comfortable coming and asking those questions. So we want to make sure we set aside a time specifically for them to do that. And then, you know, if they have questions about benefits or anything that's happened within those first few months that they are maybe confused about, then that's the opportunity. And it really helps keep things very organized and very consistent with everyone. And we try our best to make sure that no one feels lost, no one feels like they don't have someone that's supporting them or someone there for them to, you know, go to. So a lot of times the onboarding manager ends up being kind of their mentor in a way, just contact, if you will. So I don't know if I over elaborated that question or not, but that's how we do it.
No, that sounds great. That actually shows the perspective of where, if you want to have very disciplined and organized employees, you need to be a disciplined employer. As you said, you need to have the system in place. You need to be confident about it. You need to know all the steps and not just improvise with every new employee. By the way, what year was Deep Roots born?
So we opened our first location in March of 2018, and we opened Cedar Park in October of 19, and then Bee Cave we just opened in November of 2021.
Beautiful location. How many employees do you have now?
I think about 70 now. So we have about 70 employees. So we're always evolving too. You know, I try really hard to make sure that if I see something that's not working, just because it's what we've always done doesn't mean we're going to keep doing it. Hairstylists do not like change. And so that's been my biggest challenge. Managing these people is making them comfortable with change, you know? And sometimes it takes a couple of tries to get them on board with things, but over time, they appreciate and understand why those are necessary. But it's always good as a leader to know that you do have to make the decisions that are best for the team and best for the business, regardless if people are going to push back on it. You know, and I know every time I go to make a decision and I know it's going to affect them in a small way, that they're going to not love it, even if it's a positive thing, you know, even if it's something that's going to benefit them, they just get very stuck in their ways. But, you know, that's part of the challenge, but it's also what makes it really fun and interesting to work there. So
I can't even imagine. It's too big of a team. How do you even remember their names?
Well, it gets challenging, that's for sure. I'm a spreadsheet person, so I have a spreadsheet on everyone, and it's sometimes that's the only way I can remember.
Yeah, it makes sense. You mentioned a very important thing. People are not very comfortable with change, and I think it just goes down to our human nature. I actually wanted to ask Dabney about her approach to training teams, because she's been training teams for a long time, and her company has this innovative approach of visual art learning, actually, for teams who are not art related. So you train big companies like Fortune 500 companies, right? So tell us about it. How do you approach change for teams?
Thank you, Olga, and it's a delight to be here with all of you. That was fascinating, Haven, to hear about the growth.
Thank you for joining.
I think that a phrase that my team and I use to help with this is called helping people navigate uncertainty or gain comfort with ambiguity. And those are skills and mindsets that can be learned and practiced. So the way that we do it through art, at least to start, we end up in people's workflow. But we use art as a kind of third thing, a way to experience ambiguity together, meaning that when we look at a work of art with a team and invite them to look together too, they can make very different interpretations based on the same visual evidence that's in front of everyone. And they can hold each other's perspectives as possible. During that kind of conversation. We also focus a lot, and I think this is a really important part of effective team building and navigating ambiguity. We focus a lot on evidence-based reasoning. So what do you see or read that makes you say what you're saying? We try to make people's thinking visible to one another. And it's engaging and fun to do that, to look deeply and think deeply together. And I think all of this adds up to something that connects with what Paula was talking about too, which is psychological safety, right? If you can create a team where people feel they can speak up and have differing opinions and that they will be heard and understood. And that's not the same thing as agreed with or disagreed with. Aiming for understanding among a team is really, really important so that people will speak up and we can surface lots of different ways in or problem-solving skills together instead of just listening to assert our own opinions, for example. So works of art are a good way to practice all of that together, and then we can take it into workflow.
That sounds very, very interesting, and I'm not surprised that your approach has become so popular among big companies, because everyone wants their team to be on the same page, but then you think, do people see the same page in the same way? So people might interpret things differently. They might have different visions. And I like how you incorporated art and visual artifacts to growing teams. That's a very great way to go about it.
Thank you. It helps with leaders too. It helps leaders listen better when they learn to facilitate discussions about things like art. They suddenly have access to all the lived experiences of their teams and all the different ways that they make meaning. So it's valuable for leaders as well, holding that kind of space without judgment, and just becoming curious about these wonderful people that they've hired to help them deliver.
That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I could add something there, just, hearing about what you shared about, perspective and just needing to understand the view that someone else has, not necessarily to change someone's mind, but to understand where they're coming from. That's something that we use a really nifty tool called Cloverleaf that aggregates scores from, your Strengths Finder, DISC, Enneagram. You can, I think there's even more that I'm not naming off that you can pull in, and then you can make teams where you can actually see what's a conflict trigger for someone, or what's their preferred communication style, or, what is their underlying fear even, and you can compare that to another person. And it just understanding that perspective has really made a big difference in building bonds across our team, and with, for the leaders to others on the team too. So I love that, and that's interesting to think about doing it with art. That sounds really fun too. Makes working on yourself a little less, I guess, painful in that sense.
For sure. Yeah. Building self-awareness through this other thing. It's not about the person, in other words, but it's about the thing we're looking at together. I agree.
Yeah, that's great.
Thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about looking at being on the same page and aligning people's goals and vision, I wanted to direct my next question to Danielle Langton, because she works with big companies who are trying to become big, and they're growing their teams, and you consult them on strategic selling and product development. So your approach to scaling up a business, as far as I understood, is very performance oriented. So you want to make sure that your clients hire the right people who understand the task. How do you help them scale up and find the right assets for their company?
Yeah, I think I have taken what I learned after being in corporate for over a decade and being exposed to so many different types of leadership, and then coming into entrepreneurship and then building out my own team, and then helping our clients who are, building multi 6, 7 figure businesses, both product and service-based businesses. Typically, when we come into their business, they are sometimes a solopreneur, or they've got 1 or 2 people on their team. And really, in order to get to that next level, they're really now in a position in which they can start delegating and bringing more people into the business in order for them to get to the next level. And I think, one of the things that we absolutely focus on for that stage of business and making sure they're hiring the right people, because our whole mission is to help women build profitable, sustainable businesses. And to build a sustainable business, you've got to have some support so that you're not working 7 days a week, 24 hours. And really how we help, because we only work with women, how we help women really hire. And this could be a really great discussion with the other ladies in the room, but we always help our clients hire more so on personality and making sure it's the right fit. I mean, when you're thinking about building out your team, these are people that you might be spending a lot of time with, depending on how your organization is laid out. And so we really recommend our clients make sure that the women that they're bringing into their business, or the men that they're bringing into their business, really fit from a personality level, on a cultural level, just because when we're looking just at skill set, and when people are like, send me a job description, or I just want to see someone's resume, I think that really takes the personality out of interviewing someone and really bringing in a person that is the best for your business. And so I always like to guide our clients in finding someone that feels like they could spend time with that person. Of course, you want to make sure they have the skill set, but you want to make sure that that person is someone that you can trust in your business, because depending on their role, you are giving them a lot of information. When I think about our team, the women that are on our team, they have access to everything. They have access to passwords, to revenue. And so not only do I, absolutely trust them and know that their skill set is there, but I really want to be able to get excited about also getting on calls with them and updating them and hearing from them and valuing the feedback that they have. And so that is essentially why I really think it's so important, making sure you're taking someone's personality and if they're like a culture fit into your hiring process.
That's a great point because they might be a person might be very professional and a great expert, but they are not fit for teamwork, and you need it to be a team. So it's another aspect of hiring where you don't just look at performance, even though your end goal is to change the metrics and scale up the business and ramp up sales. So it's good to know that you still focus on the personality approach of it. Tell us about, I know that you have two big projects underway now. It's the Founders Club
Mhm.
and the Foundation. And you work with female founders and you help them to get into that mentality of growth. So can you just describe in a few words what you do there?
Sure. So for the Founders Club, that's how we work with women over a 12-month period. Within that, we're bringing together businesses that are scaling to typically their first 7 figures and beyond in their business. Within that program, they have access to myself, guest speakers. I typically talk to those clients on a weekly basis via Slack and email. Those are our highest level clients. And those are the people that are now have these established teams, are really, potentially adding new products or services to their business and really taking their business to the next level. My skill set after being in corporate for some time is really on how do we maximize profitability? Like, how can we make more money in our business without working harder? I think there's a really strategic way in which we can do that. And that is really what we focus on in those businesses is how can we, our whole motto is create a life and a living. So how can we make sure we're not only increasing revenue, but we're also providing the resources for these women to be able to, take time off and not be working 24/7. And so that's what we focus on in the Founders Club. That also includes 2 retreats throughout the year, which we just had our first one in April. And then the foundation is a smaller program. It's only 90 days. We consider it a 90-day sprint. And so that is for women who want that same type of growth, but aren't really ready to invest in a 12-month program. Potentially this is the first time they've invested in their business. They're not at a place to invest, multiple 5 figures into a program, but they still are looking to scale their business. And so we really focus on in that, increasing pricing, looking at hiring, looking at the products and services that you're offering, and then making sure that you essentially are running a profitable business, because that is something that I'm so passionate about. Is what I've learned is women can create any business, they can run any business, they're incredibly talented. But whenever I got into this space, I really wanted women to maximize the profitability and learn and embrace the numbers and data and know that that actually is the ticket to growth. And so that is all the stuff that we focus on in our program. So thank you for letting me share about that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just when you showed me those programs, it was like finally we have a resource where you can be in a team, you can grow together, you can have this body system, support system, and talk to other women. And the retreat pictures were so so good. You know how
Thank
to
you.
have fun. Thank you for sharing this, and best of luck. I want to hear all the success stories of the ladies who come out of the program.
You got
I
it.
wanted to take a little step back, and we talked a lot about teams and growing the business and growing the profits. What, how do you get to the place where you are comfortable with being um, the leader, with everyone, um, with taking charge of the whole situation, the whole business, being accountable, responsible, and confident? And that's my question. She probably already guessed. It's for Paula Shepherd, because she is my go-to confidence expert. She does the Confidence Sessions podcast, and the Courage Blueprint is the name of her company. And she makes everyone feel like they're in the right place, because growing a company doesn't always come with, becoming more courageous. And sometimes we need to take it from somewhere and we just don't have it in us. So how do you help people, own it, that now they are leaders, now they're business owners?
The most interesting part of this question is that most people that step into entrepreneurship are bombarded with messages about how they're now a CEO. And the majority of these people have never even had access to or been around a CEO. So they don't even know what that means. So it's like taking spaghetti and slapping it up against the wall and trying to figure it out. So the confidence truly, I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, and I can relate to Danielle. So I spent 2 decades in corporate America, and very strategic, very project management, looking at teams, how do we make this lean and mean? But when it comes down to it, it's really about people, right? It's how can I be the most human centric version of myself and the way that I show up in my business, and then encouraging other people to do the same. Because unfortunately, being a leader doesn't mean being a dictator. It's not spewing processes and saying, this is my way. It's being willing to be open and hearing what others have to say, because you want to hire people that have great ideas. You want people to step in and feel confident enough to speak up. And you want to introduce opportunities for people. I think Haven was talking about having an open door policy, but even more than that, but how do we encourage people on a regular basis to come have conversations with us? So now they also are owning their role as a leader, as part of the business, right? And part of the vision. And does that land for you or anybody else?
It does. It totally does.
I have
And Dabney would
added that.
Oh,
quick.
comments. Okay.
So I love that, what you just said. Everything about it is nail on the head. What I have noticed in my business, there's always growing pains. So you make decisions and you're like, oh, that doesn't really work. And so you kind of go back to the drawing board. But one of the biggest takeaways is people will rise to the occasion. If you give them responsibility, they actually surprise you. Like, you give them more responsibility, give them a role, give them a leadership role. We do that with our stylists. We have education leads, we have educators, we have front desk leads. We do that on purpose because we want them to know that they're valuable, and we also want them to know that we know that they can do more than what they've been doing, and they always rise to the occasion. It's the craziest thing. Like, you think someone's kind of lukewarm and you put them in a leadership role, and it's like something happens and they just all of a sudden feel important and feel valuable, and they take ownership of it. And it does create this kind of, I don't even really know, it kind of creates this sense of like ownership, not only in their role, but just in the business in general. And it creates this very cool dynamic with us and with them, because they kind of feel like they're a part of building what we've built, and it's, and we want everyone to feel valuable, and we want everyone to feel accomplished, and we want to do everything we can to help people to be as successful as they possibly can be. And we don't tell them that, we show them that. When they come to us and they ask us about, hey, I have this opportunity, is this going to conflict with the business? We're like, there might be a little bit of a conflict of interest, but at the end of the day, we want you to be successful. So we're going to support you 100% in this endeavor, and what that does is it shows everyone that we actually genuinely care about them as individuals, not just the person that works for us, but as a person, a human, and it is really interesting when you treat people the way you want to be treated. Shocking. They actually like value and respect you, and it creates this, this great symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, surprise if you treat people the way you want to be treated. Yeah, sometimes it's a simple truth that
it
a lot
really
of people
is. It's so simple, but it is, I've seen it over and over. Everyone, they'll come to us and be like, how have you guys kept your employees? How have you sustained? How have you grown so quickly? Stylists come interview with us and tell us they've heard about the culture at our business, and that's why they're applying. And so it is, Melanie and I, if we expect something of them, we're going to make sure that it starts with us. We're never going to expect anything from anyone if we're not willing to do it ourselves. So it really does, it starts at the top, but you also have to create this idea of, we know you're capable and we're going to support you, and we're going to give you these roles because we know you can do it, and we're going to give you the tools to be successful.
That's a very great support system for people. And what's unique about your business is that you know that the boss is not a dictator because there are two bosses and they have equal rights. And it was always fascinating for me how you managed to have two queens in one seat and you still the business is so successful and sustainable. So that's something else people can learn from you.
Well, sometimes it's a little bit more of an advantage because you can sometimes play good cop, bad cop. But for the most part, it really is just a mutual respect. And I stay in my lane, she stays in her lane, and we always are very respectful of each other, and we model that. So we don't ever want, if we do have a disagreement, we would never discuss it in front of our employees, and we would never let it be known to anyone. And really, there's been very few, but I think it's so important for leaders to understand that you're modeling. It's just like a child looking to their parents, right? You're modeling the behavior you want them to demonstrate in your business. So if you're not willing to take the high road or to be empathetic or to listen, then really you shouldn't be expecting that of your employees.
Totally agree with that. I know Dabney had a comment too.
Oh, I'll be very quick because I want to hear from more people, but I was just through both of these last couple of examples, I was thinking about a couple of questions that our listeners might ask themselves regularly, because I believe in, continually working on yourself and your teams as you're growing and changing. And I think they're super powerful questions for all of us to reflect on. One is, how do the people who work with and for me experience me as I work with them? Not what do I think of myself, but how am I actually experienced in real time? Right? And then how do those people experience themselves as they work with me? Do they experience themselves as people who are heard, who can make a mistake, who might take on something new? Or do they experience themselves as people who need to wait to be told what to do, or who don't bring themselves to work fully? And those are big questions, and I think we all benefit from a kind of regular revisiting of those and practicing other ways of being, so people experience themselves as positively as possible, and hopefully as within a culture of learning, right? Of learning and growth as we're all working together, which doesn't always mean comfort or ease. But
Yeah, growing pains, they say for a reason. Learning pains too, probably. And we mentioned, several speakers already mentioned sustainability, both of business growth and talent and teams. I wanted to ask Vidya, who worked on several continents in very different cultures, and I mean different states in America, not different. I'm kidding, different countries too. Uh, but what's your advice for building a comfortable, sustainable culture in a company and maintaining it as the company is growing? Because you might be starting with 3 employees and then you have 3,000. Is a company culture scalable, or do you have to reinvent it every time you grow?
Oh, it's the only reason I'm taking a minute to think is because it's kind of like the difference between the guy you dated and the guy you married. Because I've seen companies that have struggled to hold on to their positive culture or their intended culture after they cross about 600 to 800 employees. Then it tends to become more bureaucratic, more processes built in, and that kind of free flowing vibe is kind of hard to sustain in an organization where you hire tens of thousands of people. A Ford or a Chrysler is not going to be able to have the same energy as, let's say, a unicorn does, right? And there's a reason for that. I think that instead of trying to prepare for an organization that you don't know exactly how it will be, let's say 18 years from now or 15 years from now, Olga, what I might do is identify, pick and choose kind of the top three things that I would never let die. Okay. So if I am Coca Cola, then I'm never changing my formula. Okay, so you pick and choose three things as the founder of your own organization where you say these three are must haves, regardless of what happens to my organization. It could be values, it could be core features in your product, it could be the top one thing that you really demand and expect of your employees. It might be that one commitment that you make to quality, perhaps. Uh, I don't mean to say that sustainable that an organization cannot sustain itself for multiple decades. All that I'm saying is to expect an organization to be the same when it is 50 people versus being 5,000 people might be a bit unrealistic. Having said that, once you identify, I think your top three things that you are committed to, um, if you are a passionate leader, this kind of stuff is contagious. If you're building the right kind of team, they're going to buy into it and they're going to sell it for you. You know, one of
Mhm.
my most favorite quotes is, employees first, customers second. And I think that as leaders, if you focus on your people, they will be ambassadors for your company. They will market your company in more ways than we can imagine. And that's, I think, a seamless and a more sustainable way to ensure that what you stand for carries itself automatically in cruise control into the future.
That's a I've never heard it before actually. Find things that you don't want to let die. And that's probably the easiest way to go about it without trying to, stretch the fabric of a small team over a big frame. So that's a great point. And actually, I wanted to ask you, does the concept of talent sustainability apply to bigger companies only? Can a small business start using any of this principle, even if you have, say, two employees on your team? Do you need to bother, or are you too small?
Um, I think fundamentally it applies to everybody, and here's why. There are multiple things that can happen with the effort that you've started, and you've started it because you believe in your product, you believe in your service, and you've demonstrated an enviable amount of courage because what you're doing, not everybody else is able to do. I think that talent and sustainability is even more applicable to small scale businesses and solopreneurs because you have to make sure by yourself that your product continues to sell the way that you do business, the values that you have adopted for yourself, the culture that you stand for continues to stay unchanged into the future, regardless of which elements in your external or internal environments change. Therefore, to me, if you're focusing on talent and sustainability, and if you're a solopreneur or if you run a small organization, just hit the pause button. Hit the pause button because it's so hard. We are running so fast, we don't pause. Just look back and be proud of the distance that you've covered, where you start and where you are. And once you get there, I think you can actually examine, self evaluate, and ask yourself, what are some of the talents or skills that I need to learn in order to take my business from where I am today to a point in the future, a desired point in the future? There is a science to this. There is a method to this madness. And I am 100% sure that just by pausing, by self reflecting, by applauding yourself, and by examining your own business environment, you'll figure out. You'll say, hey, you know what? I'm not that great at social media. Or you'll say, you know what, I can do bookkeeping, I just don't understand taxes. Or you'll say, maybe I'm not the person in the organizations that's best suited to make presentations, or I don't understand cash flows, or I can't negotiate a lease, or I don't understand working capital management. Whatever it is, once you identify which particular kind of skill set you are kind of lacking or you want to improve on, once you build that or try to build it, you're trying to build it and you will eventually successfully build talent that is sustainable. And that talent will ensure that your business continues to function in a desired way years and decades from now.
That's a very good point, that you don't only need to think about these concepts once you already have, a dozen people under your control, but you can start again going back to the first question that we asked. Do you need to be a good leader first or have a team first? And that, I think that's aligned to the theme of this discussion. Thank you for sharing this. And I want to ask Amber, since we mentioned the idea of outsourcing some tasks when you take the introspective approach and you're like, okay, I'm doing this good, I can't do this part, I need to hire someone to do it, but I'm not ready to hire an employee, a full-time employee. And that's where your company comes into play, because you offer virtual assistants who work for many different clients, but they're not locked into an employment under a client. How is it different? How is the culture different for people who only have contractors or only have part-time employees in that sense versus having someone on your team permanently?
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for that question. I'm actually navigating both parts of that right now because I have a corporate team that consists of 8 people counting me. We're about to add another person, and then we've got around 70 contract virtual assistants. So there is a different relationship with the contractors in this sense, but I don't think that it should be viewed differently. We want our contractors to experience the same, caring culture, the culture that's supportive to them, no matter, what their status is, whether they're contractor or W-2 employee, that really doesn't matter. But what needs to be passed down is, I talked about core values earlier, and I really do. I can weave that through everything that we're doing, like I said earlier, and that's, when we're hiring, whenever Haven was talking about the hiring and onboarding process, for us, we are interviewing people around those core values questions, so the wrong people aren't even making it through the door. So we are even telling our potential new hires what our core values are and asking them to share stories around how they demonstrated those values, because the culture is everything, whether you're a contractor or an employee. And everyone, I think, is expecting the same thing. They want a sense of belonging. And, Dabney said something about psychological safety earlier. That's what people are looking for at the heart of it all. So if they aren't finding that, it doesn't matter, if they're working fractionally as a virtual assistant, or if they're working, full time as your, head of operations, it really doesn't matter. They all still want that same thing. And you, as a leader, need to make sure that no matter, what level of the business they're working in, they're experiencing that sense of belonging and really feeling like they are doing work that matters. So for us, we do our best not to draw those lines. There's obviously some challenges with a fractional worker in the sense that they're not available, around the clock, like a full-time person that would be available for, let's say, a daily huddle, for example. We have daily meetings, weekly meetings that they don't participate in, but we do a monthly meeting that we record. We do a town hall where we're sharing everything, behind the scenes, the big picture of things, because we want them to know. And we're getting feedback from them via surveys and actually going through every answer on these surveys and then going back to the team and saying, here's how we're addressing your feedback, or here's how, why we're not doing the thing that you suggested. So really it's about, keeping communication open. We've talked a little bit about that open door, type of environment. I think that really is important. And you can do that, I believe, even as you continue to scale, if you've got kind of a mix of this people element that we're touching on, but also processes that guide people through so they know what to expect. They can, have a sense of what the future looks like for you as a leader, the business, for them in the company. So there's really all of that, I think, ties together, and combining effort to develop process so that people have that structure they need, but also not doing it so much that they don't have, the ability to just be humans too.
That's really beautiful. And
I'd like
as
to
far as
add
I remember, you call your meetings or your internal system a treehouse. Is that true?
Yes. Yes. So, well, the company being Trusty Oak, it sort of naturally, I think, if I remember right, I think it was Julie, she's a VA that's been with me at least 5 years, I think, somewhere around there, maybe even close to 6 years now. She said treehouse one time, and then we just kept calling it treehouse, and it's just kind of made it fun for us to talk about our virtual office. It's a 100% remote team with all of these, these numbers, and so we need some things to kind of make it feel like, there is a sense of belonging. So the treehouse sort of gives it a fun label, and Slack is essentially our office. I mean, I know it sounds really unheard of to be able to really create that sense of belonging and connection within Slack. But we do that in Slack. We do that in Zooms. I mentioned the town hall. We do have, virtual happy hours. We do get together when we're able to. So yeah, it does take a lot more effort to maintain culture like that in a remote environment, but it is absolutely possible. And I think that's a myth that a lot of people tend to believe. Oh, it's just not the same. That's true. We did have a retreat recently. We got together in person. We were able to hug each other and, laugh about the same things, have shared experiences, but you can also create that in the remote environment as well. It takes a lot more work.
Yeah, and that's so great that you could create that and maintain that in the depths of the pandemic when everyone was so isolated and lonely. So no wonder you won the award, Austin Businesswoman of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you
And
so much.
this has been an amazing conversation, and I hope we had all night to talk about it, but unfortunately we don't. And I would like to conclude it with one piece of advice from every speaker on what, in your experience, do employees, team members value most. Maybe it's something that you noticed working with your client. Maybe it's something you noticed in your own team. And although everyone thinks that just having a good paycheck is enough to keep an employee happy, but sometimes it's not. So, as experienced leaders and strategists, please share one piece of advice on on what people usually value most in their workplace. And let's start with Amber since she's already on the screen.
On the screen. Okay. Yeah, I've already really touched on this. I really believe that sense of belonging and contributing to something bigger than themselves is absolutely the thing that everyone's looking for at the heart. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dabney.
I agree, Amber. I would say be curious and listen to understand. And as Haven so beautifully put it, when you're modeling that kind of stance, everyone else will engage in that too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Since you mentioned Haven, we'll bring her.
It's going to sound repetitive at this point, but it's that personal connection. It's that feeling important, making them feel important, making them feel heard. In our industry, especially, it can be really tough. It can be catty, for lack of a better word. A lot of employees that we hire have come from other salons, and it hasn't been a great situation as far as the team. It kind of feels everyone's out for themselves. So we make a point to really emphasize the team. There is no hierarchy. The assistants are just as valuable and important as the top stylist. And it does, it's you have to make an effort to create that environment because it's not human nature, right? Human nature is to want to be puffed up and important and more important and the most important. But really, as a leader, if you will really emphasize team and helpfulness and kindness and community and giving back and all those things, it makes them feel good, and it makes them feel like they're doing something good, not just behind the chair, not just in our building, but in the community in general, you know? And so I think that, yeah, like that human connection, a lot of us are missing it nowadays, you know, because everything feels so disconnected, right? You have like social media, and after the pandemic, a lot of people kind of withdrew, you know? So I think now more than ever, that human connection, that feeling of belonging and just helping and being part of that bigger picture is so valuable to these people.
Thank you for sharing. Next, I would like to ask Danielle.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll add on to what everyone had said, and then I do have one additional like new thought. But again, employees just want to feel seen and heard and understood and just like humans. And so I think if we can allow them to feel trusted and a part of it, I think that's really important. And then something that I've just learned over the years, and this was important in corporate and then obviously important as an entrepreneur, but sometimes we feel that we need to, go above and beyond and give, employees all these perks and, more money. But sometimes people really just value time and seeing them and just, needing to go either take time for themselves or time with their family, or when they're not feeling well. Like, we don't need a whole story as to why you're not feeling well. Like, just having employees know that, you see them as a real person, and if they need time to do whatever it is, there's no explanation needed, that you trust and value them, to do what they need to do. And so that's something that's really worked well for us over the years, is just our team knows if and when they need time, no questions asked, do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, trust. So important. Well, if you share passwords, I don't know any other levels of trust. That's as far as one can go. Vidya.
Yeah, so what everybody else said, I think they're all very, very important and very valid. To answer that question, as I think back, Olga, on what I liked about my bosses, about my leaders, especially in my early career, um, I think that people tend to gravitate towards anybody that makes them feel good about themselves. It's not about telling people how good you are, it's about telling people how good they are. Give them something to aspire to, give them something to truly give them a little dream that they can dream, and tell them every day that they're worth it. And I think that when people feel good about themselves, you have a positive environment, you have a motivated workforce, you have a motivated team, and I think at the end of the day, we're just people, like everybody else said. So weave that into what everybody else is saying. A sense of belonging, a human connection, giving them time off. I think it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Thank you. And the person who answered the first question, will say the final word, because you're a really good public speaker and podcaster.
Well, thank
so
you. And my
it
kids
better
and
be
my
good.
husband would say, I got to start and end it all. No, just kidding. I of course echo everything that everyone else has said. But for me, the most poignant and amazing experiences that I ever had working for someone, and what I hope to replicate in what I'm doing and building with my folks in my business, is to pour into them, give them not just the opportunity to speak and be heard, but for you to take action as a result of it, but also to give them the chance to grow beyond their current skill set into something else. And doing that with the opportunity and the mindset that it doesn't matter if they leave, right? We're never pouring into them. We're never giving them training. We're never doing things in an effort to coerce, but to allow them to evolve and grow. And when we do that and we give them that space, often they'll stay longer because they feel like a part and not like a gear in the machine, but more a piece of this ultimate unfolding and growth.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I like this point of view. And if I can put in my little opinion, I would recommend learn from people who are better than you are in leadership, as I've done today. I learned from these amazing leaders and these inspiring women. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. This has been so valuable for our viewers. And thank you for what you're doing for your teams and for your clients.
Thank you, Olga.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Olga. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Olga.
Thank you
thank you
all.
all for watching.
So fun. Thank you.